What's up, guys? It is Alec. Before we start this episode, two quick things. We had multiple issues recording this episode, so we had to record it a couple times. We had audio issues, we had video issues. They're both in there. Bear with us. The message from today is amazing. And that leads me to the second point. We are going to be touching on some very sensitive subjects today. Stick around, though, because it's a powerful, powerful message. Dani Bates is on today. She has a very compelling story, and she went through a very tragic loss in her life with her husband. And just bear with this message. It is a very amazing story, and it's going to help a lot of you out there. We love you all, and we'll see you in the episode.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Fatherhood Unscripted. It's your boys, DJ and Alec, and we have a very special guest today. Today we have Dani Bates. She's a mom, she's a mental health advocate, and she's using her journey to bring awareness to suicide prevention and healing after loss. She's opening up here about her story and just showing the raw realities of grief, single parenthood, and finding hope again. We're excited to have you on. Thank you for blessing us with your time. We just talked about just you first off, and then we'll kind of get into your story. Who is Dani?
Okay. You summed it up pretty well. I'm mostly just my whole life revolves around just being a mom right now, you know? I'm a mom. I lost my husband almost 6 years ago now to suicide, and so I've been doing suicide prevention ever since, and just raising my two girls, and recently found love again, and am combining a family, which is a whole new experience. And yeah, I'm 35, so I was widowed at 29. It's been kind of a wild journey.
Well, can you talk about that a little bit? Just with losing him, what kind of state that kind of put you and your kids in?
Yeah, it was really rough, especially the first couple years. I mean, it's still rough, but I don't like to say that it gets easier. I don't like when people say that, or that time heals all wounds. I think that's bullcrap. I think that it only heals if you are doing things to heal it during that time. And I think it doesn't get easier. I think you get better at dealing with the issues. I think the same amount of grief is still there. It's just that I've grown around it and learned how to cope with it better. But in the early days, it was a lot of shock and, trying to tell my girls and be honest with them. They were 3. One had turned 3 exactly a week before. I just had her 3rd birthday, where Daddy got her a bike that we still have in our garage because I can't bear to get rid of it. And then my 10-month-old, who obviously did not understand anything that was going on, but was still, kids feel things. And so she still was, it was rough for her. But my 3-year-old especially, I think that was the hardest part of dealing with all of it, was watching her, because he was the best, most involved dad. He was the dad who was getting on the floor and playing with her. He was the dad who was roughhousing. He would come home from work 3 or 4 nights a week, I swear, and be like, "Okay, I'm taking Winnie, see ya," and he'd just peace out. And I'm like, "Cool, have fun without me, I guess. I'll stay with the baby." They would just go to a movie or go get dinner or whatever. They were just the best little buddies. And he was just a very involved, supportive, loving dad. He loved doing the bedtime routine. So doing those kind of things was really hard and painful to do. I don't know how else to explain it, but I had to have a lot of help doing those things, because I just could not, that was his job.
Yeah.
And now what do we do that he's not here? And yeah, Winnie definitely had a really hard time, and that was the hardest part, was watching her. She would have it took a week or two to set in, and then once it did, she was having constant panic attacks to the point of hyperventilating on and off all day long, like spent most of the day in tears, and that continued for months. And was really rough. And we started therapy like 2 weeks after he died. And I had already been in therapy, but we started my daughter in at 3 years old, doing therapy. And so we're still going, still once a month to this day, we're still toughing it out. But yeah, it was really, really rough, especially in those early days where you just can't even get a grip on what happened. And then I'm like trying to like, I'm a single mom all of a sudden, and like only parent. So I got to figure out,
Mm-hmm.
he couldn't get life insurance because he had Crohn's disease. So I'm like trying to figure out how to cancel the sports channels because I'm never going to watch those. And it costs us, $200 a month. And I'm like, okay, how can I save $200 a month? I have to go cancel these sports channels. So I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to like find out where his business account so that I can figure out that with his boss. I'm trying to like the things that you have to do when you're in that state, and you have to like do all these like logistical things. It's a nightmare.
It's just kind of like a
Yeah.
landslide. It's like he's holding everything back, and then all of a sudden, it's just everything's there.
Yep. It's a mess.
Yeah, I could imagine. Yeah, because when you're a team, you're a team, right? So
Right.
when you lose part of your team, you're like, he was so good at these things. I don't know how to fill in the, like I want to fill in, but I can't fill in because it's like I'm not him, and it doesn't feel right. Yeah, so I can imagine how tough that was. And then, like you said, just kind of having to still do life because you're still a mom, and these kids still need to be taken care of, even though you're also grieving.
Yep.
So I can only imagine how tough that was for you to have to navigate those waters.
Yeah.
I mean, my hat is tipped off to you because I know that wasn't easy. So
I got a lot of and I still get it, I think, a lot, where people are like, I could never, how did you do it? How did you do this and that and the other? And I had almost a year before had lost my mom, and the year before that I had lost my grandma, who was like my second mom. So I was like on my own, and then his family is grieving and they can't help a ton, and then my sisters are grieving, and it's just everyone's a mess. So I was like kind of just flailing, and people had to step in that I didn't know as well and whatever. But it's just lots of people were like, how, I don't know how you could, but when you're a parent, you just do it. It's either that or I go like, I like become, I don't know, a crappy mom and let my kids get taken away and like live a miserable life. Like, what, I don't have any other options. Like, I have to figure it out, and I have to still be a good mom and be, here, even though I'm grieving, and watching my kid grieving is the most painful thing I've ever seen ever. But you still have to function. So parents just figure it out,
yeah, I know something that Alec always likes to say, like being a bad parent, easy, like that you could just walk away at any moment and just not look back and I don't care about my kids. But being a good parent and wanting to be there for your kids, that's where the hard battles are fought. That's where it is its hardest. And so I just want to say, like, obviously you probably already do this, but give yourself credit for that, because you did step up to the plate, even though a lot of things were coming your way. You didn't have a ton of help. You had to go you kind of had to pivot, find different resources as you went along. And so, yeah, I think it's a lot. It's okay to like, your journey should be inspirational to others, and to show them, like, if you want it, the strong person inside of you will come out when you're put up against a wall and you have no other choice. So
that's what I tell people all the time. I'm like, you would do it too. If you wanted to be a good mom or a good dad in that situation, you would do it too. You would figure it out. I'm like, yes, like I'm super proud of myself for what I've done and accomplished over the last 6 years. Of course, like I know that I like have done a lot, but at the same time, I'm like, anyone could do it too. If I can do it, then anyone can. It's when you're forced and you're pushed up against that wall and you don't really have a choice. It's like, you just figure it out,
Yeah, and it's unfortunate what it was bred out of. You know, it's very unfortunate for that. Can we just so? Is there any advice that you would give? I mean, there's a lot of people. Mental health is it's a big thing nowadays, and there's a lot of people like me. We have both gone through things in the past where we don't look at when you're thinking about suicide and you're thinking about stuff and you're in that situation, you don't think about the other side of it. All you're thinking like is I'm gonna do this, it's gonna be over and I'm gonna be done. But you don't think about like what happens to your family, you don't
Mhm.
think about what happens in life. Um
Yeah.
and like you said, he was just this awesome in everything dad. Like was there a change? Like was there anything you saw um in the moment, at the end, I guess?
Like in him, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the day before my daughter's third birthday, we found out about someone we love dearly who was being abused by someone we love dearly within our family. And Denny was a victim of childhood abuse, and something that, because he was, I always say this, but it's true. He was mentally the healthiest he'd ever been in his life. Like he'd struggled with suicidality growing up, and with mental health. Like he was on SSRIs at a very young age. Like um, he'd struggled on and off, and but he had been so good. Like he was an alcoholic, and he'd been sober for like probably 9 years by the time he died. When I first met him, he was he just kind of was like a very like all in on everything he does. He like gives it 100. So if he wants to get fit, he's gonna get fit, and he's gonna eat barely anything, and like and just go to the gym twice a day, 7 days a week. Like he like that. Or if he was like, I'm gonna like he literally at one point in his life said he wanted to gain weight because he wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and he said the bigger you are the funnier you are. And so he chose he's hard to explain. Okay, he's a weirdo, but he was eating McDonald's 3 meals a day. Like he was very committed to whatever he was doing. Okay,
Yeah.
so when I first met him, he was in the phase of like, I want to be super fit. So he was going to the gym literally twice a day, 7 days a week. Like I like obviously this is mental illness coming into play, right? That he was like so I believe it was OCD where he'd get very obsessed and he'd have to like do these things over and over. We didn't have a diagnosis. So,
Hmm.
but that's my, just from talking to my therapist and his therapist and whatever over the years. But, um, he was in that phase where he was like gym constantly, eating almost nothing, like some form of eating disorder. Like he was very extreme. And then, later on in our when I like start getting pregnant, he's like, yeah, I don't care about that anymore. And so then he's like going all in on not gym and not, anyways, he was very like extreme in these things. Or and he like, by the time he died, this is the whole point I'm trying to make, is that he was going to the gym like 3-4 times a week for 45 minutes. Like he was eating breakfast for the first time in his life consistently every day for like over a year. Like he was able to spend money normally, like where before he would either commit to saving a ton and only use coupons, or he'd be spending a ton of money and like getting into debt. Like he was like, we could go out and have a fancy meal, but he also would use coupons when he go grocery shopping. Like he had found so much balance in his life and was so healthy. And when we found out about this abuse, it literally just switched something in his brain. And overnight, he was what I assume similar to how he was before we were married, when he had struggled like years before, because he was just like, he was so anxious, he was upset, he was constantly pacing, he stopped sleeping, he stopped eating. He was like, he was the funniest person, literally the funniest person you ever meet in your life. Like, so, I mean, as you can tell from the stories I'm telling, he was such a freak, like so weird and so hilarious. And he like wouldn't laugh at my, like I would tease him and he wouldn't laugh about it. And it was like, what is, like, it was so weird. But
Mm.
of course we had just found out about this abuse. Like, it was a big deal. We're like trying to figure out how to help the victim and help this person like have a stable living situation. We're trying to like help as much as we can, and so like it's stressful. And I knew that he'd been through some abuse. I didn't know it was sexual abuse until after he died, which now I do know that he had sexual abuse. But he like, so I assume like it's stress, it's triggering some things. Never in a million years would I have guessed that he would do that. Even when he like, he went missing for a day and a half before they found him. And so we were searching, there was like a missing persons in, like
Oh.
I went 110%. I had called everyone. I had people like calling hospitals, going to his gym, going to whatever, right? We're looking everywhere. And um even then, like the cop asked me like, would he ever do anything? I'm like, no, not in a million years. He wouldn't, because he was so obsessed with our little girls. He was obsessed with me. We were so happy. He was so healthy. I just
Hmm.
never in a million years would have guessed that that's how it would have turned out.
Yeah. I know, like, um, it is crazy, the like how like switches can flip, and it can take you from being this stable person to, it's almost like, sounds like his brain just kind of like protected him. That's what our brains
Yeah,
do, right? It goes into like this mode of, this happened to you, so we're gonna shut off and like try to tell your body to just go through the motions, so you don't
yeah,
have, like, it tries to protect you. And so like, just, it took one little thing to trigger it back, and all of a sudden he was probably back in that, as however old he was when it happened, like he was back in that mode, and like
yeah,
scared, like things like anxious, like you were saying, just, and it just goes to show you that, like, mental health, like, it could be an up and down journey. You could be good, and then all of a sudden it just takes one thing to bring trauma back into your life, like
yeah,
to remind you of it, and it could take you down a spiral. And like you said, like, and I've seen some of your videos on TikTok, and just like, there was one, there's like poopy face or whatever I think it was, and like my heart broke, because like, I'm like, my gosh, like I can see the love like between, and I've had those moments with my kids, so it's like it put me into that situation. I'm like I feel like I know you kind of mentioned something like this, but like he felt like he had no other choice. Like this was the right choice for his family, because he loved them so much. He loved you guys so much that's what he thought was the only way.
yeah,
And yeah, I'm just yeah, I just want to share, like, that, but yeah, just obviously you're now advocating for men's mental health and just mental health. Just kind of talk us through, like, how this whole situation kind of propelled you to want to be a voice
yeah,
for that. So
yeah. And I want to just agree with what you said and say like, that's why it's so important to heal things from your childhood and your, because like, even over the last 6 years, there's been triggers and things that have happened in my life that could easily, with all the trauma I went through in such a short amount of time, could easily send me over the edge. But I've worked so hard to get to the place where I'm at so that I can deal with these triggers, so that I can, and of course I still mess up and I still have things come up, but I can survive it, and I don't go to that delusional place where I'm like, oh, my family would be better off without me, right? And he, like, I don't think he had the tools or the ability to even recognize what he needed help
Mm,
with, because I think he would have done anything to stay with us and help us if he could, right?
right.
So I think if we have the ability and the tools and the language and the people around us to do it, like heal those things, so that we're all going to have crazy things happen in our life.
Mm,
Life
right.
is a crapshoot half the time. And so if you have those tools built up, it's going to make it so much better that you don't go to this like obviously delusional place where you're like, oh, my family will be better off without me, right? That's obviously
Yeah.
crazy and dumb. But he never would have done that had he not been in, had he been able to heal some of those past wounds and those past traumas. But so with advocating, it kind of was by accident. So it was totally by accident. I um when my daughter was having those panic attacks that I was speaking about earlier with the like hyperventilating, it was
Mm,
horrible. And she's such a like she is like pure sunshine, this child of mine. Like she is so cute and so sweet and so happy all the time. Easiest baby and toddler you've ever seen. So I was like, I am an amazing mother. And then my second one came and I'm like, oh no, that was just an easy kid. That's It's not me, it's the kid. Um, but she was just that kind of kid. And so when we go to therapy, she wouldn't be doing the panic attack. She wouldn't, like, she'd just be so happy and playful with our therapist. And I'm like, no, it's so bad at home. Like it's such a struggle. It's all day long. Like, I don't know. And then
mm,
people would come over and she'd be fine and happy. And then as soon as everybody left, it would hit her again and she'd fall apart. And so one of these, and I'm like trying to ask her, like, how do I deal with this? And she was like, I mean, you need to love her and support her and you need to be there, but you also need to let her get it out. Like, don't just like fix it every time or distract her or whatever, because she needs to grieve this and she needs to feel this. And if it gets to the point where she's hyperventilating, obviously step in. But when she's crying, let her get it out, because these are big feelings that she needs to get out. So she's telling me this. She's kind of giving me guidance. I'm trying to, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Okay. Is everything still okay? I just had something pop up on my screen.
Yep.
Okay. So I tell my therapist says, like, why don't you take a video of her meltdown so that I can see what it's like and like, guide you through it. So I take this video of her having a panic attack and saying like, I want my daddy. I want daddy to hold me. Daddy's not coming back. And I was watching this all day, every day, right? And I just wanted to fix it for her, but I'm trying to let her get it out and grieve. And so I take this video and it's horrifying. And I'm just like, I just think, like, I know that after someone dies of suicide, that people around that person have a tendency to become suicidal. And I was so desperate to even save one person after he died, especially the people that were close to us. I was like, I cannot lose another person. I just had so much loss in 3 years. I cannot do it anymore.
mhm,
Especially suicide is it's unlike any other death I've ever, been near. It was so much more traumatic for me. I need these people to stay alive. And so I posted it on my Facebook and shared with friends and family. And I said, like, if you are friends with me or Denny, please watch this and remember that you need to be here. And this is what happens when you leave. And that video just like took off. And a lot of
mm,
people hated it and said I was the worst mom on the planet. And then a lot of people loved it. And like, I was getting messages that were like, this saved my life. Like this, I was in my car about to do something and I scrolled through Facebook one last time and I saw this
mm,
video. Like I got the most beautiful messages of people who chose to stay and to fight and to work through it because they saw how this affected my daughter. And at that point I was like, okay, I guess this is my thing now. I guess I'm doing this. I'm going to all, if I can, like
mhm,
the just like, I don't know how to explain it, but like every single time I get one of those messages, and I was getting messages at least one per minute during certain times when it was going viral. Um, like I had to have friends help me respond because there were so many. And then finally I just got to a point where I couldn't respond to them because there were so many messages. And I'm talking like tens of thousands within like a month's time. Like it was so many. And I each one of those that I got just kind of healed me in a way and helped me feel like this is something that I have no control over. I'm in this situation that I had no control over and obviously would have done anything to stop, but I can't, and we're here now, and that's the reality. And so if I can do something to make anything positive come from the most horrific situation, I want to. And so it was like such a like surprise gift that I got in the worst of circumstances to be able to like impact other people and help them stay for their loved ones, you know? So I just had to keep on doing it because it was so good and beautiful and amazing. And then I would tell my daughter, and she's known all over the years, like I'll read her messages that people send about her video and she loves it. Like she thinks she's famous. And I'm like, yeah, for your dad dying. Like, oh, okay. Um, but yes, you're
Yeah.
like,
Hmm.
but the fact that that little girl has saved so many lives, like her tears have
Mm.
literally kept dads here for their kids, kept moms here for their kids. Like that, what a gift to come out of the most horrific situation, you know? I just have always felt super grateful to be in that position. It's like it's hard like doing these podcasts or whatever, they're it's never easy. It's always hard, and like I always have like a day after where I have to kind of like emotionally recover, and then I'm posting about it, a lot throughout the year. And but it's like the reward of being able to help people is so worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something like, advocating for mental health, just anything from kids on the autism spectrum to ADHD to OCD to helping somebody, who is having suicidal thoughts. Just the whole spectrum of mental health. We need more people in this world advocating for those who may not have a voice or who may be in a dark place and just needs a hand to reach out and say, "Hey, let me pull you back up.
Yeah.
We can do this together. We can get over this together. We can get over to the healthy place you want to be."
Hmm.
Because it's all it takes. All it takes is, I think there's like a I don't ever really quote scripture on our podcast, but in the Bible it talks about, if two are walking, one falls in a ditch, you have that person to help you. But if you're walking alone and you fall in the ditch, there's nobody there. And I think
Yeah.
what you're doing is you're being that person walking alongside them, saying, if you fall in, cool, I'll help you out. Like, or if I can't get you out, I'll go find the resources to pull you out.
Yeah.
But we're
Yeah.
here for you. And I think
Yeah.
it's what this world needs. And I think that you're able to do that. You're able to be that voice and that person to help people get through toughest times. So
I hope so. It's hard to like because I do get a lot of like messages that are rough to hear or that are like that I just can't handle sometimes. And so there's only so much I can do, but I like every time something I share or say or them seeing my little girl, I swear that video goes viral every 6 months again. It just like pops back up and goes wild again. And then I get tagged and everybody's like, this is Dani's video, don't steal it. And everybody calls her a little boy because she was the baldest baby at 3 still in the whole wide world. And people just assumed that she was a boy because she was bald. I'm like, no, she just didn't have any hair. But like every time it's just so healing to be able to be that. And even if I'm not the one to be able to help them fully, like to give them the resources or just give them the boost to go find or talk to someone or share with their wife or their friend or whatever. Like, what a gift if I can be even the smallest little part of that, you know?
sure.
Um, and I think we talked about that a little bit on the podcast here. Is like this was birthed out of me and DJ trying to just get what was in our head out and just kind of talk about us as dads and kind of just get our stories out there and just vent essentially. And now the podcast very recently has turned, or I think it's been more than recently, but we've noticed it more than recently that our niche now, instead of just being a podcast for dads, is mainly becoming a mental health podcast, which is really cool because obviously we both struggle with stuff, and so it's cool like to be there for people. And we have talked about in the past, like if you're not willing to talk to family or if you don't want to talk to somebody, that talk to somebody. Like we talked about reaching out
Yeah.
to better health and stuff like that. It's just getting it out because I think it helps a lot when you're able to at least express yourself and get the things out there instead of bottling
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think men especially really struggle with that. I feel like I love seeing like Logan's stuff that he does because he's such a like a healthy version of masculinity where he can, carry around his little baby chihuahua and dance with his swig cup to a Chapel Roan song, but he's also like a blue collar worker. Like that version of masculinity that is like, it's not about just being a tough guy and holding it all in and and that's a big problem that Denny struggled with. And part of it is because of the abuse he endured from his dad when he was a kid. It was horrific abuse. And his dad is long gone now, thank goodness, because he would be gone if he wasn't gone, you know what I'm saying? But he said horrible things to Denny from the time he remembered he actually was probably like around this time right before he died, because we're almost a month out from the 6-year anniversary. It was in February sometime. And I remember him looking at Winnie, who was about to turn 3, and him being like, it's so crazy because I'm like looking at our little almost 3-year-old, and I remember the things that my dad said to me at that age, where he'd say like, I will hurt you until you stop crying, or man up and look me in the eyes, to a 3-year-old. Like he remembered those kind of things. And I hope it's not as extreme nowadays. And he just was like, I can't even imagine doing that to that sweet little girl or to any little child, But I love to see this version of masculinity where it's not like that anymore. And it's more like a healthy man is also loving and kind and talks about their feelings and is able to admit that they need to go to therapy. Like that's a real man that can go to therapy and get help so that they can fully be emotionally available for their family and their wife and their husband and their child, or whoever it is that they need to be emotionally available for. That is the version of masculinity that I feel like I've seen such a change in over the last even 6 years since he died. It is like, it's amazing to see that. This 6 years ago, there never would have been someone like Logan able to be like, they would have just like completely shamed him into, and I wish Denny could have seen that. I wish Denny could have seen someone like Logan talk about their mental health so vulnerably and so openly, and share their hardest, darkest times and talk about how they recovered from it and how they had to work through it. Like that is what masculinity should be, and that's what manliness should be, and that's what a father should be.
Definitely, I do agree with you. It is slowly, the pendulum is swinging, and I think it's just our generation just saying enough is enough. Like we're gonna stop holding on to this baggage that has been
Yeah.
passed down from generation to generation to generation, and we're
Right.
going to, because I gave an example this morning, just like when you're thinking about baggage that you're holding on, do you want, like, let's say it's a 50-pound bag, do you want to throw that onto your 3 or 4 year old? Like that's exactly what it is. They can't
Yeah.
handle that, and
No.
sure enough, they're left with scars and trauma because that baggage you were holding on to, you just threw it onto them, and
Yeah.
it wasn't their pain to hold on to, their anger to get healing from, but we pass it on to our kids. And
Yep.
so I think that our generation is saying like, hey, we need to start talking about these things. We need to be more open about these things.
Yeah.
Men and women both. Like we got to
Yeah.
get talking. We got to share even when it's hard to share. Like you were mentioning,
Yeah.
like it's hard and it still is hard, but
Yeah.
the difference it makes if somebody can
Mm-hmm.
just hear it and run with it, and if it can save their life, then it's well
Yeah.
worth all the
Yeah.
struggle you have to go through to get it out there. So.
Well, and just that we don't want to put our crap on our kids either. Like that's such a good point because I remember after he died going into therapy and being like, okay, let's fix this because I know I'm going to have major trauma from this. I know my kids are going to have major, I don't want to add to this plate that they already have. Let's fix my crap so that I don't pass that on to them, so that I don't add
Mm-hmm.
to their trauma. Every kid is going to have some form of trauma. We're all going to mess up as parents too. We're all going to have to we're going to pay some bills for our kids' therapy, right? All of us are going to. But if we can minimize that as much as possible and
Mm-hmm.
heal our crap that we've been through, like how much more successful are we setting our kids up like for so much healthier, more successful, happy, full lives, that they don't have to wait till their late 20s like me to realize there's severe OCD and to deal with that and get on the right medications and all the trauma of the 30 years before that I now have to heal.
Yeah.
Let's start them at the beginning, going to therapy and seeing their parents struggle and do well, and us being honest about it and open about it as much as appropriate for children to hear, and to like show them how we work through it, and then to work through our own stuff so we don't place that on our kids. Like that it's gonna heal the next generation, and you can already see that in the younger kids
Mm-hmm.
and how they deal with things, like it's amazing to see these kids. Like my 8-year-old will call me out in my crap and use therapy terms, and I'm like, rude, but thank you. But also I'm kind of mad about it, but thank you.
That's kind of how Dee did, but so he has struggled his whole life, and he realized he wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until he's older, and
Mm-hmm.
so he had to kind of deal with that. So he's working with his kids now for that, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and to your point too, like my son will sit there and say, "Dad, that wasn't cool that you yelled at me,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, you know what? This 4-year-old is absolutely correct,
Yeah.
and it stops you in your tracks. Like, "Ah, I'm not mad at you for saying this. I'm mad at myself that I let myself get to this point that I'm yelling at you. Like,
Yep.
you're right. I should have even gotten to this point. I should have took a step away and took a deep breath, like I tell you to do. And
Yep.
so, like, yeah, he is right there. He will call me out and has no shame in doing it. And I love that because he's
Yeah.
even able to identify with himself. He's like, yeah, I'm just feeling really sad right now. And it's like, oh my gosh, like you can identify emotions. It took me until my late 20s, early 30s to start identifying
Yeah.
emotions and realizing what this was and where it's coming from. And you're
Yeah.
able to do it now. I'm so proud of him because it's like we're setting them up for success, like you were saying. Like it's so cool. It's so cool to see.
And doesn't it like heal you a little bit too, watching that? Like that's
Yeah.
that's what is so amazing. Like watching my little girls, like one of them has similar like anxieties and stuff that I struggled with as a kid, and to be able to parent her through that and see how much healthier she is and how much more like I have severe OCD, and sometimes she'll do things that are like kind of naughty, but like they're very anti OCD, and I'm just
Mhm.
like, that is amazing. That is healing to me to see that. And I don't know, to see her, even if sometimes it's a little naughty and makes me a little mad, I'm also like, but good for you, girl.
Yeah.
Well, if there's now we're rolling up on the time. If I can ask, if there's one thing you can say to people struggling, if there's there's people out there that are thinking about doing things themselves and struggling with thoughts and stuff like that, is there one thing that you can say to them that you give advice or to help them in those times?
Yeah. I mean, everyone is different what they need to hear and what like helps them. But something that I've shared a lot that I do think helps people is at least a lot of people, not everyone, not everything applies to everyone, but when you're in those moments, like I know it's hard to find a reason to like fight for yourself, it's hard to find a reason to heal for yourself or to try and get yourself in therapy and get the medication and get whatever you need. Like it's really hard to find that within yourself. And I think that was like a lot of what Denny, it was like, he was like, I'm going to do this because it'll help my family, which was obviously delusional, but it was like, he didn't have it in himself to fight for himself. So I hope that people will see what happens and not, I don't want to like guilt them into living, but kind of like, if you have to find a reason outside of yourself, like your kids or your dog or your neighbor who relies on you to take out their garbage can, if you have to find some reason outside of you to keep on living until you can find a reason to like value yourself enough to stay alive and to want to stay alive and to feel enough peace and happiness to stay alive. If you have to have something outside of yourself, then use that. Like, yeah, guilt yourself into staying alive. Like, do what you have to do. And look at the video of my little girl. Save it to your phone and watch it over and over. Every time you start to feel like that, force yourself to do that. And remember because it doesn't just do that to your kids and your spouse, like it does that to everyone. That's just like such a perfect visual of it, right? But all of us feel that way when we lose someone that we love, especially to something so traumatic like suicide. Like it's such a perfect visual of it, sadly. But like use what you have to until you can find it, because eventually you'll be able to figure it out for yourself and want to stay alive for yourself. And like you need that, and you need to like be able to find it in yourself. But until then, use your religion, use your whatever it is that brings you peace and like makes you want to fight and stay alive. Do that until you can find it in yourself.
Yeah, I like that advice. Just, find some reason to take small steps towards getting the healing that eventually that you want. And so, because you're right, it comes down to just like eventually you're going to have to find that place where you want to do it for yourself. But until then, you've got to find ways to just make small steps towards that goal of, I want healing for me. I want to get to the best version of myself. So then I can turn around and be the best version for my spouse, be the best version for my kids and my friends and my neighbors. But like you said, just find a reason just to keep moving forward, because eventually you're going to pull yourself or find somebody to help you pull yourself out, and you'll get to that point. Yeah.
And so many people want to help you too. Like the people that came up to me and were like, if Denny would have told me, and I'm like, yeah, I know, if he would have told me, you know what I mean? Like so many people were like, I would have done anything for that man. And I'm like, yeah, same. Like I never thought that it would end that way. Otherwise I would have been like, I would have, I don't know, strapped him down to the couch so he couldn't leave until he was better. Like there were so many people who would have done anything to help him, and he had no idea how valuable he was and how loved and needed he was. And every person is like that, even if they don't feel like it or realize it in the moment. There are people who will go out of their way to help you. There are strangers who will go out of their way to help you if you are struggling. You just have to reach out to the right people and keep trying until someone can help you.
Well, as we're wrapping up, I just want to say first and foremost, thank you for being on. And for those of you who don't know, or you wouldn't know, but we're re-recording this episode, some audio issues. So Dani was very helpful in this and coming back on. And I think her story is amazing. And I think that her vulnerability is going to help a lot of people. And so I just want to say, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you, one, coming on, but two, coming on again so that we can record this and get your story out there. And, if we could just help one person that listens to our podcast, I think that is good enough. You know what I'm saying? We could just help somebody, pull somebody out of the darkness and help them get to the light and
Yes,
just
I fully
live their best life. Yeah. So I thank you so much for
thank
coming
you
back
so
on.
much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. I think it's so important.